Gathering for Justice ongoing virtual town hall series, We Keep Us Safe. My name is Carmen Perez Jordan, and I am the president and CEO of the Gathering for Justice. I'm really pleased that you are joining us this evening for the special 15th Anniversary Week program. For those of you who don't know, the Gathering for Justice was founded by the legendary Harry Belafonte in 2005 after he saw a story on the news about a 5-year-old Black girl in Florida being handcuffed in her kindergarten class for throwing a tantrum. After realizing that Black and brown children were being brutalized by police across the nation, despite the work of the civil rights movement, Mr. Belafonte brought together elders of the civil rights movement and youth from across the United States to form a covenant to end child incarceration and dismantle systemic racism in our justice system. Since then, we have worked on various campaigns, including Take a Knee, Free Meek Mill, Raise the Age, Justice for Eric Gardner, and more recently, Justice for Akbar Rogers, Justice for Jakey, and Justice for Sean. Our work is grounded in building an agenda for Black and brown liberation, and so I am truly excited to welcome today's conversation on Black and brown solidarity. We're first gonna get to a historical analysis, a brief history on Black and solidarity, and I'm so proud to welcome the next two guests. Aida Hurtado is a social psychologist and a professor at the Department of Chicana and Chicano Studies at the University of California, Santa Barbara. Her research focuses on intersectional theory, educational achievement, and on radicalized media representations. She is also my former professor from UC Santa Cruz and the person who actually introduced me to Chicana Feminist, which I am a proud member of. Gay Teresa Johnson is an associate professor of African American Studies at UCLA and writes and teaches on race and racism, cultural history, spatial politics, and political economy. Her first book, Spaces of Conflict, Sounds of Solidarity, Music, Race, and Spatial Entitlement in Los Angeles, is a history of civil rights and spatial struggles among Black and brown freedom seekers and cultural workers in LA. Johnson's current work includes an edited volume of The Futures of Black Radicalism, co-edited with Alex Luban, and a single authored book currently entitled These Walls Will Fall. And so please join me in welcoming both Aida and Gay. Welcome to today's conversation. I'm so excited that you are here. First of all, I just want to thank you for all your work. Like I said, Aida is somebody who grounded me in Chicana feminism and has led me to organize the largest single-day protest in the history of America. And Gay, you have been somebody that we have constantly sought for wisdom around Black and brown solidarity. And so I want to welcome you both. I'm really excited about this conversation. We've been working on this conversation for the past 3 months, considering the current political climate. And just want to begin with both of you sharing some words. What does it mean to have Black and brown solidarity historically, right? So we talk a lot about what's happening in the current political climate, but we understand that Black and brown solidarity didn't start 2 weeks ago or 3 months ago. It's been something that has been part of the fabric of the struggle of Black and brown people in this country. So I want to open it up to you both.
Well, I think Gay told me I had to go first, so here I am. I'm not a historian. I'm a social psychologist and a Chicana feminist scholar. And I was thinking a lot about this because it's very easy for us to look at what's written in history and sort of focus our attention on that. So I was trying to think, where did my commitment come from seeing all problems is our problems or our oppressions rather than us or them. And I realized it has been really helpful because we did some prep talks around this issue. I realized that when my family lived in Mexico, they lived in a port city of Tampico, and it looked very much like a little baby New York. and the ships came in from all over the world. And I remember my grandmother living very close to the port, and there were always La Familia Brown y La Familia Smith y La Familia. And I didn't realize until we had this conversation that we're talking about Black families that had settled in Mexico, coming in through the ports, World War II, all kinds of, international upheavals have brought these families into various places in Mexico. And of course, like all people of color, mostly settled in working class poor neighborhoods. And it was La Familia Brown, y hablaban español, and there was no difference. We just sort of recognized that background. And then the second flashback I had was growing up. We were part of the labor farm worker stream from South Texas to Toledo, Ohio. And the first neighborhood we lived in after we settled out of the migrant stream was in a Black neighborhood where there was white flight happening in the late 60s, early 70s. And I realized that that's the neighborhood we lived in. Those are the kids we played with. And so there's this lived experience connection that I think then it seems once you become a professor, and you are mobilizing around issues, you've always had that solidarity because you grew up next to each other, and because your cultures intermixed and your lives intermixed. And so these intersections end up facilitating the work that we do in the political realm and the academic realm. So I really thank you for sort of juggling my memory and sort of seeing that history that is often not seen, and that it's often invisible. And those collaborations and living side by side is really not what gets documented or what is sexy. What is sexy is cuando nos peleamos y nos agarramos de la greña and everybody's fighting, and all of a sudden the cameras get turned on. And I think it's very important for us to show those bubbles, those lived experiences that just make that solidarity so natural. So
I just wanted to, before we get to Gay, I just wanted to ask you to share a little bit about this intersectional being, right? As intersectional people, brown and Black folks are intersectional people. And so there's this form of empathy that you and I have discussed in the past. If you could share briefly about that, especially because I think it's important for the audience to understand some of our abilities to sympathize with one another regarding our issues.
Yes. And you know what? The other thing that we can't forget is when you are poor, you're not only poor, you're also of color. You also are struggling to get your kids into school. That there's a multiplicity of struggles that get shared in a lived neighborhood, in a lived geographic. The analysis should be a geographical space, to quote my colleague here, who actually brilliantly does that. And so that these intersections happen because you're next to the neighbor that has the same kinds of vulnerabilities as you do, and therefore they hurt the way you hurt. And so, the thing that Janelle Monáe was saying at the march, what happens to you happens to me. When you hurt me, when somebody hurts you, they hurt me. And so that it's very difficult to separate their pain from your pain, because you have lived up and grown together. And, eventually, because you have that mindset, my nephews, Afro-Latinos, and their mother is from Belize, and my sister's from South Texas. And we just see them as our nephews, even, and their vulnerabilities. I mean, I am obsessed with all these police killings and stuff. And it just rips your heart out, because there is no distinction. These are children that you saw grow up. These are children that are your children. And so that intersectional understanding of oppression and colonization really gives you this deep rooted kind of connection that emotionally is very difficult to say, well, it's not happening to me or people like me, but it is. So so yes, it's very much based on that notion.
Thank you. Gay. Hello, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. First of all, thank you for having me. When you ask, we all say yes, because we know what amazing and fierce work you do. And also, Aida, is always amazing to be in conversation with you. And so it's always an honor. Um, I, um, as somebody who is a cultural historian, I think about all of the ways that white liberal historians have tried to create a picture of the United States as this multiracial place that is this bastion of liberal idealism, when actually the people who first created the kind of multiracial communities that were democratic were all Black and brown people. And the reason that we had to do this is because as early as the mid 1500s, we are forced into creating Maranash communities in places like Mexico, in Veracruz. And this is happening all over. Yanga is becomes such an important fixture in Mexico, but also as a story among slaves in other parts of the region. And we remember the border was created. And so there was not this sense of like over there and over here. The experience of being enslaved, and also the experience of being enslaved in places where you could see different variations of enslavement and chattel labor, and the ways in which people's families were separated. All of this has been happening to Black and brown people for so long, but most importantly, we've been resisting it together for so long. So when we think about what we need today and how often we ask this question about where do we find this? And what we've had it, we made it so long ago out of necessity, but also out of our creative brilliance. So during the Reconstruction era, and I'm so happy, Aida, you said this, and this is why I always know we're supposed to be in conversations, because when you said Tampico, I was thinking about the communities that Black New Orleanians made during Reconstruction, when it was worse in many respects for Black people living in the United States during the nadir, the terrible time after slavery, who take refuge in Tampico and who create families of mixed people. And then some of them coming back to New Orleans and becoming Creole, and all of the ways in which Black and brown people have crossed borders, both literal ones once they were created, but also have created brilliant communities where things are shared. So it's no mystery why there's an affinity between folks, because we have had to move and be mobile all the time. We have to go to Cuba, and we have to go to Puerto Rico, and we have to be in community with folks, learn Spanish, or come to the United States like Chano Pozo does, to play with Dizzy Gillespie and Mario Bauza, and learn English and learn about Jim Crow. And we have to together navigate how, as Zoot Suiters, we resist police violence. We have to figure out what abolition is, not just when we're fighting against slavery, but as Black and brown people together fighting against the carceral state. And we do this all the way from the 1500s. And so here we are now. And, sometimes it just feels so heavy, because when we look at the reality and we get to learn from these incredible veteran activists here, the reality of what's happening, it's very difficult. And anybody who's really doing the work will tell you it is no picnic, and its beloved community is no picnic, but everything we need, we got, and we already have. And so that gives me hope, because I know that those relationships are intuitive, but they're also always being regenerated and remade. Even when it seems like we have nothing but this, we still have each other. So I'll stop there.
I really appreciate that because I think it's important for people to understand. I think oftentimes, even in the current conversation that's happening with progressives, is that there is a separation, right? There's a separation there. There are those that could speak on the issue. If you are Afro-Latino, you could speak about it. But if you are a lighter shade of brown, you're not to speak on it. But what you brought to the conversation, both of you brought to the conversation, is this connection to Mexico, right? Specifically when it comes to descendants of Africa, right? Tampico, you talked about Yanga. You know, I've heard these stories. I've heard about, folks also, fleeing to Mexico because at some point it was a free country. And I think that was probably done through the leadership of Vicente Guerrero, who was the second president of Mexico, who was Afro-Mexicano. But could you share why it's important for us to continue to build in solidarity with one another, to continue in this path? Because I know that in the next conversation, there was solidarity happening through the Kansas City Peace Summit, but brown folks meant brown, right? It meant all Latinx people. It meant all Latinos. There was like no nobody was distinguishing who can have a conversation or not, who could fight for the liberation of people or not, right? And I feel like at this moment, the conversation is shifting, but it's also shifting with folks that are maybe not connected to this history or this lineage, or feeling a responsibility to continue in the path of maybe some of our ancestors.
I'm happy. Should I? Okay, I'll go first. Okay, I'm so inspired by our younger folks, our younger brothers, sisters, trans folks, everybody who is on the ground doing this work, but also who are thinking in as part of a new generation. So there's all these cool new ways to intellectualize the terms by which we inhabit these bodies, etc. However, I also think that there's been too much focus on the naming. The naming is important. We know that especially in our communities, naming is very important, but don't let that be a distraction from the movement work that is happening. Don't get so caught up in people calling you the right thing, Afro-Latina. You can't be an Afro-Latina because you're half this and half that, or whatever, these identity things that I think are important, but also can function to sidetrack us from the things that need our urgent attention. So, I mean, it's simple, as complex as racial capitalism is, as complex as power can be, and as complex as the means of oppression are, often it's very simple. Keep us distracted. This is Toni Morrison said. The very function of racism is to distract you. So to maintain focus together and figure out where is it that we meet rather than where we diverge, I think it's just something simple. Divided, we lose. Together, we win. That's simple.
I think that the distraction is the easiest distraction is the debate about names. So when we were developing the term Chicana and Chicano, oh my goodness, those were like the pleitos of the century, right? It's like, were you Mexican American? Were you of Mexican descent? Were you Mexican origin? Were you? And it distracted us from the fact that it was farm workers that were getting pesticides thrown, sprayed all over them, that they had the short handle hoe, and their backs were being, broken, and they didn't have restroom facilities in the fields, and they were getting paid nothing. They had no health care. It's like, my dad was a farm worker. Dijo, no me importa que me digan, nomás páguenme bien. Like, doesn't matter what you want to call me. I just need to have a living wage. And that to me, I have always carried that with me into the academy. Like, if you're willing to do the work, call yourself whatever you want. And it's naming is very important, but like Gay say, don't let that be a distraction. And that is the easiest carrot they put in your eyes, right? That's the easiest distraction, because our discourse, the discourse that we're forced into, that we're educated in, does not explain our reality. That's why we're fighting, because we can't find the label that expresses the complexity that we just said in 3 or 4 minutes. Try to decipher that heritage, right? So I mean, my grandmother must have been Mixteca porque era de Veracruz. She spoke an indigenous. Many people think I look Afro-Latina. Okay, I'll go with it. You know, and then my nephews are, you know, Belizean and Mexican, and, you know, all these combination of things. What is the label that we can accurately apply? We don't have one. So we then end up getting approximations for these labels. And in those approximations is donde está el pleito. That's where they split us apart. And we need to struggle to create our discourse. That's what I love Toni Morrison, because she gave us an amazing heritage, or Gloria Anzaldúa. They broke open the discourse that came the closest to naming our reality, but we're not there yet. So in the meantime, let's keep with the work. Let's keep with the real work as we struggle to create a discourse to really, really capture the reality of our existence and of our identities that are multiple, intersectional, and important. But the work, in my view, is much, much more important. And I always have the voice of my dad, páguenme bien, and you can call me whatever you want, you know?
Yeah, and you know, I really I think that's so important to just share as folks are trying to do this work, is that there is a lane for them, right?
Yes.
That at this moment, you know, there were no borders prior to borders being put on us. But there was something that you said in our check-in, Gay, that I'm probably, you know, I'm going to try to paraphrase, but you said it so well. We get into this scarcity model, right? Where, you know, in what makes us powerful is when we are able to define ourselves. And there's a lane for everyone. And so we cannot continue to allow ourselves to be sanitized down, right? In order to keep us divided. And so I really, you know, that we were trying to play back the recorded conference call, because we were trying to make it into a quote, because we thought it was just so important. It's so real, right? I think, you know, like Aida said, she gets mistaken for being Afro-Latina, sometimes indigenous, right? We have siblings and we have the same parents, and everybody looks different. My sister Letty looks like she's indigenous. My brother Carlos, they think he's Arab. You know, it's just so, we're so mixed. We're such a mixed people, and we're also not a monolith, right? And I think a lot about the complexities, the beauty within the fact that we're not a monolith, right? As Latino, Latinx, Latina, you know, as gente, but that also can create some of the tension that we have within ourselves. But I want to hear from both of you. You know, my father was born in 1924 in Anaheim, California, during a time where there were visible signs that said no dogs, no Negroes, and no Mexicans. What was happening during that time that, you know, Black people and Mexicans were being discriminated against? And it wasn't that long ago. It was what, 95, 94 years ago, because that was happening in the 1930s, and it was happening in Texas and in California. But were there moments of where Black and Mexicans came together to fight that type of discrimination?
Go ahead, Gay.
Okay. Oh, so many moments. And, you know, I can see that picture in my head of the no Mexicans, no dogs. I can see that picture. And, you know, and I feel that like that sign is repeated every day today as well. I mean, how many times do we have to hear it all day long? And then also it's exercised against us as well, just in terms of the racial terror that we experience because of the police and ICE and all of that. So there are so many instances where Black and Mexican people, especially in places like Los Angeles, were working together, again, out of necessity. And a lot of those initiatives and a lot of those strategies are spearheaded by women. And people don't really talk about that, but it's like the women at church or the neighborhoods that many of us are forced into because of urban renewal or because of whatever kind of slum strategies that people had, the way that the war industry was built up and how we come to congregate in certain kinds of residential spaces, but then eventually in popular cultural spaces, at concerts, at picnics, low riding on the East Side, and all of the things that we do to reassert our humanity and to keep each other whole and prop each other up and keep each other together. And the way then that we celebrate, but also share soundtracks of our human condition and our brilliance. And so there were so many, and I write about Charlotta Bass and Luisa Moreno, who were so active in Los Angeles at the same time, who both were writing about, Charlotta Bass writing about the editor of the longest running Black newspaper in Los Angeles, the California Eagle, was writing about the Sleepy Lagoon defense case before La Opinión, and Luisa Moreno, who fought for Black workers in cannery, in all kinds of different spaces, and who was eventually deported as well. A Guatemalan woman who Vicky Ruiz writes about. This is all stuff that's happening at the same time that we're seeing this sign around, where people are trying to figure out in the Depression, white people, white power is trying to figure out, how do you sort out the narrative so that you can discriminate against Mexicans on Mondays, and then Black people aren't allowed at the pool on Tuesdays, and no Jews on Fridays. And how do you get that narrative straight so that everybody can buy into it? It's a whole project. And so Black and brown people always have had that number, and they have had a very sophisticated analysis about power relationships, and they have answered that at every turn, not just with our brilliance, our intellectual brilliance, but with the ways that we decide, despite police surveillance, despite ordinances that are supposed to keep us apart and away, we get together, we dance, we have the same music, we participate in jazz, blues, all kinds of jump blues, and all kinds of amazing, and now of course, reggaeton, and all the other soundtracks of the work that we do so brilliantly together. So the thing about it is that history is so brilliant. What if we told US history from that perspective first? It would be a totally different story, and we wouldn't have no questions about who we are.
Yeah, thank you. Aida?
Well, I think that one thing we have to understand, that we as our embodiment as people of color, we serve white supremacy for various purposes. So the distinctions that we make amongst ourselves, that's the sad part, is that white supremacy doesn't see those nuances. Mexican dogs and Blacks, right? We're all like, we're at the service of the master. And so we are just duplicating that supremacy amongst ourselves when we don't see that commonality. And the fact that it's like in South Texas, it's 98% Mexican, right? And the 2% that are white hold all the power. It's like apartheid. It's like South Africa, before it was taken down. And we need to see that sign is still with us. And that sign is very, very well used by the powers that be that want to keep white supremacy. We're in a white supremacy moment, because I don't think it's just the changing demographics and that we're people of color becoming the majority, is that we are also learning how to get along. So when we fight, like in Santa Barbara, we have a Department of Black Studies, we have a Department of Chicano Studies, we have a Department of Asian American Studies and Feminist Studies. And guess what? We all get along. Oh my God, that is like the revolution, right? We're not fighting each other. We don't say, well, they got 2 positions, we didn't get any. We're saying, Black Lives Matter. We went 110% Black Lives Matter. It's that moment. We don't have to say, well, what about our department? No, our department is behind Black Lives Matter. We are going to invest in getting as many African-American faculty there for now, because you know what? This is that moment. And so if we realize that people of color, up to the white supremacy, it doesn't matter if you're brown or if you're black, if you can be used, you will be used. And so we need to sort of think through what happens when we don't see that solidarity, and what happens when we internalize those differences, that they tell us, si estás más güerita, you're more valuable. And if you're darker, you're not as valuable. We need to get rid of that crap, because it's only in the service of a larger oppressive force, colonizing force that has existed since this continent was colonized and enslaved, and we are all part of that enslavement at some level. So we need to feel that solidarity.
Well, Gay and Aida, I want to thank you both so much for sharing your knowledge with us. We're going to invite you back to the conversation after, right before we close. But again, thank you so much. I think it's important for people to really understand, and the fact that both of you are women of color who are, sharing with us and educating our next generation of students is so important. And so I want to thank you both. I'm going to go ahead and bring on the next segment. And so I want to welcome to the conversation Gaylord Thomas, who has been active in the peace movement, as well as on the street activities and other violence prevention intervention efforts, mostly in the African American and Latinos community for more than 20 years. His efforts have been to promote mediation and coalition building in the areas that suffer from urban decay, violence, and poverty. Gaylord was the founder and now serves on the board of Rescue, Release, and Restore Incorporated. And I know Gaylord because of my mentor, who I'm going to introduce next, Nane Alejandres. And I met Gaylord in Chicago, who was also leading Simba, which is Safe in My Brother's Arms. It was an Afrocentric rites of passage program. Our next guest is my mentor, Mr. Daniel Nane Alejandres, who is the founder of Barrios Unidos, a violence prevention organization dedicated to providing alternatives to at-risk youth and re-entry opportunities to people who are formerly incarcerated. Barrios Unidos grew out of the Chicano rights and civil rights and peace movements of the 1960s and 70s. The organization harnesses the power of culture and spirituality to engage young people and providing avenues to quell gang warfare and models for building healthy and vibrant multicultural communities. Nane is also the co-chair of the Urban Peace and Justice Summit, a national organization that works to forge truces between Black and Latino street affiliations. Welcome, Nane and Gaylord, to the conversation.
Thank you.
Hi. So, we got a lot of information from Aida and Gay, who shared moments of solidarity between Black and brown folks. And so I want to hear from you both. What was it like? I know that in your presence, as I've sat at the feet of both of you, you all have talked about the 1993 Kansas City Peace Summit, as well as organizing in Black and brown communities and bringing peace within prison walls. And so I just, let's start the conversation there. And Nane, if we could, oh, there you are, Nane. All right.
Nane, you want me to jump in with the summit?
Yeah, man, I'm glad I didn't wear my gray, Congo, man. So good to see you. How you doing, man?
Right, I'm good.
Yeah.
So this whole thing goes back to 1992, 1993, and the climate in the United States at the time. One of the things that jumped in my head trying to think back on it was there was a movement of trying to say that African-American males from 18 to 22 was an endangered species, and actually talk in DC on what that means and what should happen. But two things. I want to start with what Gay said in her closing. She said, everything we need, we have. So the mood at that time was, let's change the whole paradigm and see if we can do this ourselves. If Black and brown people can go in and create a peace movement and some justice in our own communities without the law enforcement, without outside forces coming in. So the National Council of Churches and the World Council of Churches together, the Social Justice Committee decided to put this on the agenda. Let's address this issue in the streets. What happened in Los Angeles with Rodney King uprising. But this time, we want to talk directly. We don't need to talk to the caseworker. We don't need to talk to the agency exec with a community development, community-based organization. We want to talk to those who are affected directly. Participants, folks that had time inside of institutions, folks on the street, folks that had respect, and folks that knew that we had to change. Most of us that came to that summit already had a mindset of there had to be some change. So the National Council of Churches hired an organizer named Carl Upchurch, who was a previously incarcerated individual, and he went around to 17 or 19 cities. And I'm not sure who gave him the names, but somehow they did some research and talked to key people who had power and voice on the streets and had some history of trying to change that direction. And so they got a location in Kansas City and we all convened. There was 40 of us that were resource people from different national churches and other nonprofit organizations. We had 197 participants coming from 17 states, 40 resource people. And I remember first day we went in the parking lot and convened, now they looked up. The church was adjacent to an expressway in Button. And there was 158 news services there to monitor what was happening. This was probably one of the real first times in modern times when these people from these backgrounds came together and had voice in a positive way. It was totally operated by the participants. We didn't have outside facilitators or anybody. The thought was that there is a carrot at the end of this journey, and that was the enticement. And there was a carrot. You know, we incorporated organizations. We told them how to get 501c3s to seek funding and other resources. But the summit itself was a strong base of people who had vested interests. I can't even remember the roll call of the historical activists that were there. But everybody came with a positive intention. And we had tension between us. It was not easy at all. But in closing on my introduction, I want to say one thing that has driven me and kept me focused. In the morning of the third day in the sanctuary of the church where we met, Nani got to the podium and said, we appreciate everything that you bring in. We appreciate all your support, your donations, your contributions, and your love. But at this time, we do not need any more sprinters in this race. We need marathon runners. So if you can't come in here and commit for 26 years, rethink your direction.
Wait, Nane said that?
Daniel J. Alejandros.
Thank you for that, Gaylord. Just out of curiosity, because I think it's important for the listeners to know, how old were you all during the 1993 Kansas City Peace Summit?
Oh, you want to reveal age now?
Well, no. I'm just saying because right now, like,
we can do that right now.
because I saw you sent me photos, Nane, and you looked young, right? And so what I want to share with the audience is like, you could do peace, at any age, right? You don't have to, be older. Like you all were fairly young during that time.
Well, sitting here at 71, I'm trying to figure out how old was I in 93. But I think Gaylord, always good to see you, brother, and this relationship that we've developed not only at the Peace Summit but throughout our lives and what it means to our families. we met ourselves, and then we incorporate our families into our relationship. And I think that's the crucial part of of all this, is that introducing our families to each other and seeing where we come from, and all the struggles that we've gone through, just being to where we at, to when we got to Kansas City, and how my 50s, I guess, somewhere in there. I'll add up the numbers in a little bit, but thing is that we were coming out of in Santa Cruz in California, and there was a lot that had been in the 80s and 90s had been terrible for us in the killings of Chicanos and African American brothers and sisters in a lot of our communities. So we were all looking for a way to gather with some other folks. We knew that we couldn't do it alone. We knew that we needed to make it a national movement. And when the call came to Santa Cruz to be part of it, it was something that we had been working on. But it took some time to try to meet each other, know who was doing what, because also we had come out of the experience of what the law enforcement had done through organizations and so trying to make sure that everything was legit and everybody was together on it. It took a little while to knowing each other. Gaylord talked about the summit, knowing here you're bringing two cultures together that, like the African brothers in the West Coast, where a lot of folks, we grew up together, Black and brown, and different communities. That wasn't the case in a lot of the other communities that came from different areas, that there was a large population of Raza Latinos in those areas. So some of the African brothers said, the first time they were meeting a Chicano, so when they came from the streets, and although they knew people in their areas, it was totally a different East Coast, West Coast, and the Midwest coming together. And even the raza was in there. We had different styles, a little different culture, different slang. So getting together, when we met there was something that came up in terms of between not understanding each other's cultures, is that we had our elder Henry was the chanupa, the peace pipe, that we brought up to offer as a prayer and as a beginning of this gathering, and having young African Americans that didn't know what that all meant, and asking the elder for if they can use the peace pipe for something else, and not understanding it. And there's this clash that happens on the 7th floor. All of a sudden, here we are one of our first days, and there's something happening on the 7th floor. Fred Williams, who was the co-chair for the African American brothers, and I was the co-chair for the Latinos, rush up to the 7th floor, and here was a misunderstanding of two cultures. They're very spiritual, but when the elders in the older folks in the African American saw what was happening and took their youngsters aside to educate them about traditions that were sacred to us, and because within our young people that we've lost those sacredness, it didn't, to them it really didn't mean anything, and they weren't trying to be disrespectful, they just didn't know. It's just that the elder knew that was a very sacred item and had to be called on. I think that was one of our first community. We kind of shut it down real quick, but I think that was an experience that we can use to see how we can come together, and because we didn't know who some of these folks are. They didn't know who we were. We're coming together, and a lot of things could have happened. In the streets, it would have been settled totally different. But we came for a purpose, and it was very powerful, because those same young people, when later on times when the drum would come out and we would start singing, they would gather around the drum, and they got educated to what it was to be indigenous in our way. And so you look at those things that happened was in this movement. Also, you know, having so many people from throughout the country asking the government to support this kind of peace, because there had been peace treaties in LA and other places that were not economically supported. And that's why people like Gaylord and others were there to see what could they do. There was a woman by the name of Crystal Haley that came from the California Wellness Foundation to find out what was going on, what was happening, because they had just put out an initiative of $30 million for violence prevention. So she goes there and checks it out. So we had these folks, we had Jim Wallace from Sojourners Magazine that was covering the whole thing. And there was such an important piece of this that economically, the administration at that time, the Clinton administration, sends a telegram saying, you know, good luck with your conference and pretty much you're on your own. So we knew that from the beginning that we were on our own. And that's how when the resources and the context that Gaylord and others brought was very critical to what happened after.
I know that there are folks like G2 Siddiqui as well at the 1993 Kansas City Peace Summit, but how did what happened there translate into organizing in Black and Brown communities?
One other piece that was critical at that time is, as I said, the National Council of Churches in partnership with the World Council of Churches sort of supported and launched this effort. So they had an obligation within themselves to do something. So every mainline denomination and others were committed to create a model or something to respond to this urgent call in the streets. So everybody was reaching, trying to find something to do. And everybody who came to the table didn't have over expectations. I mean, they were at a reality point. Everybody knew they wasn't gonna drive home in a new Cadillac. That was out the question. But they did come to see what resources were available. And so from that time, from that moment on, organizations, we probably incorporated 3 or 4 organizations at that summit. We had some resource people there that helped them incorporate, form their 501c3 applications and start. Other organizations built relationships with funders, as Nane said, and other people to come out, and technicians, and to help them build organizations. But at the core of it, it was peace. At the core of it, it was that there would be a table set where we'd have open dialogue. As long as you knew how to act, you could come to the table. And that was throughout the summit, throughout the movement. Conversation, open dialogue was critical, and setting this table concept of those players sitting at the table was the image that we portrayed throughout the summit. And we would control who would be at the table. So the district chief of police ain't gonna be there.
Right.
Other folks ain't gonna be, it was us. And we kept that control that way. And so for me personally, as I went through life, I incorporated it. So when we started our organization of African American Rites of Passage for African American males between 8 and 18, I naturally incorporated what I had learned at the summit, the people I met, and Nane, Barrios Unidos. And so we shared everything. Every year for the last 27 years, we've come together and isolated this population. That's critical to change. Is moving them out of their current place, taking them into the woods, and spending 7 to 14 days together, sleeping in tents, eating in mess halls, and just put our previous cultures and our reality out the window and brought this new understanding together in tune with nature. And so our Brown brothers brought us great rituals and great exercises that they used in their communities. And we had some. I remember I brought some sacred stuff that we used in our fires and stuff from Africa, and we incorporated it into some frankincense that I used to bring back, which was a real added treat to some of our rituals. But we went through life. I personally just admired and watched Nane as a leader, as an unqualified, undesignated leader, just evolve into who he was and watch his wisdom. And so I admired it. So I just latched on, and he became a lifetime friend to me and an anchor in my life, as well as involved in his family and all. So that was a separate path. That friendship brought these two communities together. This Midwest Black community and this Northern California Latino community have married. So we got 100 people in each community that know each other, text each other, and talk weekly. And that was built through a lot of intentional conversation and pain, because it ain't easy. Don't let me lay this thing out easy. It's complicated on both sides, but the journey's been worth it. I talked to Nani, we talked the other day, and we talked about some things happening that we didn't really think should happen. Some more people that we worked with who went the right path and then turned around and went the wrong direction. And at the end of the conversation, I said to him, yeah, but I named about 8 people from my limited memory that we knew had gone through a process, had purged themselves, went through transformation, and were now doing great things, touching hundreds of other people. And with those 12 images or 10 images in your mind, that's what drives you. That's what gets you up every morning. You know there's a victory out there. You lost 100, but you got some that are out there saving. And that's how you go to sleep at night.
Yeah, thank you for that, Gaylord. I think that puts it in perspective. I know I certainly been to one of the Simba camps in the past where I did get to see, you know, the sweat lodge being put up. And I've also been able to be in ceremony where the frankincense that you brought from Africa, we've been able to use. And so just the gifts that both of you bring. Nana, do you want to share?
You know, I'd like to say something that really important that happened also in the Peace Summit, and that was the Sisters of the Summit. Whoa. And you know, when we got there, you know, we brought all the women that were involved in throughout the Bodies Unidos network. The Black Brothers also brought, you know, the sisters from different organizations, but there was a young sister at that time that came from Boston. And she saw what was going on, and it was mostly men talking. And she stood right up there and she said, Black women in this country are dying like young Black men are dying. Everybody's saying, save the Black man. I work on the streets. I'm watching the sisters' side too, but in different ways. I watch sisters go through 2 or 3 abortions. By the time they're 16, I watch sisters carry guns. I've seen women gangs. I was on the streets doing all of that negative stuff too. It can't be that we're all fighting for the Black man. We have to fight for Black people, men, women, children, because we're all dying. And that changed the whole, I mean, this is in the middle of the first night. And it changed. And she goes on to say, the sisters coming forward and saying that was powerful. We made ourselves a priority, which the Black women and Latina women a lot of times don't do. In the Women's Caucus, we got to do the talking. We got to show our fears. We got to cry. I thought that should have happened in the General Summit, which is what was very, very true, you know. And by the end of the summit, there had been created Sisters of the Summit, Black and Brown sisters that helped very powerful. Some powerful sisters came from Chicago that were running neighborhoods, and power sisters from Minneapolis. And I think it shifted the Peace Summit that a lot of times to this day is not talked about a lot, you know. But I think that the dynamics that it brought is that, you know, these women went out to the neighborhoods of Kansas City. During the 4 days that we were there, the violence went down. There was not one killing, not one act of violence was in the whole community. And once we were there and incorporated the homies from the neighborhoods to come into the Peace Summit, it opened so many doors. The mayor welcomed us. The mayor went on to become a, you know, congressman, you know. But I think, G, that when the women spoke up, then it took a different route.
She was 26 years old.
Yeah.
It was the most incredible speech I've ever heard of anybody making a son. She said, when our kids fall down between the toilet seat and the sink from a drug overdose, you're not there. When our kids get shot on the streets and they put the yellow tape out there, you're not there. Oh, she said, most rent days, you aren't there. We're here. Oh, she had everybody in there crying. It was incredible. And she's still doing some organizing. Nani and I ran into her in San Francisco back in the early 2000s. She's still doing some organizing, but her presence there and what she did to the whole movement and how we operate will never be recognized and given her credit for. Never.
Well, I don't want to, so I'm going to go ahead and continue to move forward with Alex and Skip,
Yeah.
but I don't want you all to go anywhere because we're going to bring you all right back so that we can have some words. And thank you so much for giving that analysis. That is so important for people to understand, and also bringing in the voice of the women into the conversation, because I do remember the stories, Nana, that you shared around the women and the sisterhood that they created there. And so thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and move on to segment 3, which is Black and Brown solidarity, building and peace work within Black and Brown communities. Our next guest is Alex Sanchez. He's a dear friend and comrade in the movement. He is an internationally recognized peacemaker and co-founder of Homies Unidos in Los Angeles, where he has developed and implemented innovative violence prevention and intervention programs since 1998, and has also led the organization as executive director since 2006. Welcome, Alex. And Skip Townsend, another brother in the movement, another family. I'm amongst family today, so I'm really excited. I almost got emotional when Gaylord was talking, but Skip Townsend is an American gang expert and former documented Bloods gang member for over 27 years from Los Angeles. Skip is the co-founder and executive director of Second Call, a gang intervention nonprofit, and board member of the California Ceasefire Committee. Welcome. Thank you so much. I also want to share that both of you, along with other members of the community, are the co-founders of the Black and Brown Alliance for Justice. So thank you so much for joining us in this conversation. Like I said, we've had 2 phenomenal women share with us the history of Black and Brown solidarity, and then to hear our OGs, Gaylord and Nane, just talk about the work that happened at the Kansas City Peace Summit, but also how it helped them develop a friendship that really became more family in the work that they do in both Chicago and in Santa Cruz. But I wanted to bring you on because, one, I respect both of your work, and I love you like brothers. And every time I call, y'all show up. I remember when I lived in New York City, I'm like, I'm coming home, Alex, and you take me to go eat some pupusas, or, Skip, I need you to come and, speak here. But the work that you all have done, if you could just share what you all have been doing for the past couple of years in your community and what you all have built together.
You want to go ahead,
Go ahead,
Alex?
Skip. Go ahead,
All
Skip.
right, so let me start with what I've been doing over the last few years. And of course, Carmen, you, Alex, and Nani know that, oh wait.
Alex,
Oh, go ahead.
need you on mute.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
so
I'm in the
you guys,
restaurant, man. In the hood, right?
yeah, you guys know that I'm doing this work because of Darren Bo Taylor, who came before me, who was, at the heels of everything that I even thought of doing, or even I thought it was crazy. Matter of fact, let me just be honest. I thought Bo was crazy at first. So for me to be doing this work, it shows that I have a little crazy in me as well. But it's continuing that mission. It's been to, service the community. And as I serviced the community, when I was with Bo, I decided I was going to get everybody a job like Father Greg Boyle. And then I found that the community was suffering from PTSD, and that the P is not for post-traumatic stress disorder. It's for present. It's constantly reoccurring every day, with law enforcement, and every day in the community there is the trauma never ends. So started taking those turns and helping with trauma-informed care, but also helping individuals with reentry and coming home so that they can become productive members of society. And each turn, I see how it's all connected, how they're all connected. And during the pandemic, I'm sitting there talking to Alex, and he had food. I'm like, well, man, let's bring the food. Come on, let's go. And him and JT, Johnny Torres, came at me with, hey, let's do this Black and Brown. Let's get East LA and South LA together, and Pico Union. We all come together, and we've been doing the Black and Brown Breaking Bread. But we also have a Black and Brown Alliance for Justice, where, we have the same issues, and we need to speak together in unison, as opposed to there being two separate missions. The mission is the same. We all want to get rid of Jackie Lacey, if I could say that on here. She will not prosecute any police officers or any sheriff deputies. She just refuses to. So we have that. We also came together because of the vendors, the street vendors. They were being attacked and robbed, and really some of them were hurt, but mostly it was just ridiculed. It was to ridicule them and show it on Facebook and Instagram. So there was a lot of work that went on behind the scenes to make sure that we brought that respect level in, and people just didn't know about it. So we created the Black and Brown Alliance for Justice so that we could share with each other what we're doing and actually work together to do certain things, whether it's an action in the community or whether it's just to organize and make sure that we feed everyone in the community. So instead of doing it in silos now, we're doing it together, and it's been working really well.
I love how you brought Bo Taylor into the space, rest in peace, Bo. He was somebody that I met as well. And how you were talking about the fact that, you thought Bo was crazy doing this work, and you out here doing the same work, right? You out here. But, Alex, if you could share how you got involved doing this work as well. I know that, and the work that you currently do, and how you and Skip linked up.
Well, I gotta say that the first time that I was introduced to this work was by Magdalena Rose Avila, right, who had been the designated transnational representative of Homies Unidos, which has started in El Salvador in 1996. He invited me to this gang conference in Santa Cruz, and I went, right, and I showed up, and I heard Nane, I heard many people, and I met many people that have been part of the Kansas City Summit, and it just blew my mind, man. And I had to say that nobody had come down to my neighborhood, and talk about the way that people were talking about in that conference. So I like to say that I was reborn again in Santa Cruz, into this movement, where it's not about religion, it's not about um, just fanatical beliefs. It's about culture. It's about understanding each other, and I fell in love with the work, and I kept continue relationships with Nane, who I've had to call sometimes when I feel down, and I met with other Black brothers. I ended up meeting Bo Taylor as well through the Peace Process Network out of Tom Hayden's office, and I fell in love with his vision. He was actually the first African American brother that I started working with in regards to trying to build relationships within the Black and Brown. Actually, relationship with me and him, right? It wasn't about Black and Brown. It was like I never had a Black friend, and I think that Bo really showed that friendship, right? And I loved him for it. He stepped up every time I called him up. He was there. He didn't send me people. He showed up, right? And every Cinco de Mayo, you know, where shit got hectic around the hood, you know, between Black and Brown and Martin Luther King Day, you know, we called on each other to be there, you know, and that's how I got to meet a Skip, you know, through Bo, and I felt that it was important, you know, to maintain that relationship throughout. So throughout these years, you know, Skip and I have met and talked and kind of kept in contact with each other, never really connecting to do the work, right? Because we were so busy in our own silos, right? But now with what's happening with Black Lives Matter and this differences in regards of some Latinos starting things that were sounding like anti-Black movements, right? Trying to talk about Brown Lives Matter in a way that it sounded like anti-Black, and I felt that I had to get involved in that, and I ended up, you know, connecting with Skip, and I said, "Hey, Skip, you know, we got to do some shit, man, and we got to focus on some of the key issues in regards to the people that we served. We can't repeat, you know, what's being done right now. We have to keep it in the work, right? So we understand that for us, you know, police brutality is beyond a Black brother being killed in the streets or a Latino brother being killed in the streets. It's about the justification that they do behind it, right? He's a gang member, right?
Mm-hmm.
And once that label is being placed on them, it's justified, and the community will accept it as such, right? So we felt that it was important to start addressing those key issues and bring people together, right, to talk about, you know, how some of the brothers were being picked up in from our neighborhoods and dropped off in enemy neighborhoods, and call it for what it was: kidnapping and attempted murder, right?
Right.
So we felt that it was critical to address those issues, and we ended up meeting and going through the process. We had a lot of people that wanted to be part of it initially, but the process needs to take its place, and now now we've been able to call it the Black and Brown Alliance for Justice, right, where we're addressing some of these issues. Not only are we going to be addressing the issues of, you know, get Jackie Lacey out, but also, you know, the issues of voter registration, right? The issues of what our brothers and sisters are going through in their neighborhoods. You know, the Breaking Bread, the Black and Brown Breaking Bread campaign is to distribute food in those Black neighborhoods, you know, where there's a lot of Latinos as well, where that's how we want to make these relationships happen again. Because you have to understand that right now in Los Angeles, there's been a lot of the organizations that are doing gang work have been co-opted, you know, and these organizations are now just working for a paycheck, and they're stuck to what they're getting paid with and what funds control them, right? So it's really difficult now to be able to have like a summit on the level that happened in Kansas City and Los Angeles right now, you know, because people are getting paid by the city and their allegiance is to their paycheck. So it's hard for them to come to the table, not only behind that, but also because many of our Black and Brown violence intervention workers have been used and abused, right, by organizations or think tanks that have got us together and have taken our knowledge, have done their own shit, right, to make a buck out of it, and they leave us out of it, right? None of us have really ever come out of those meetings or those coalitions in a way that we can say we got something out of it. So it's been really difficult to get a lot of folks together that are doing the violence intervention in the community to come to the table. But I think that what we're doing, and it's not an easy matter. I hear Gaylor and I hear Nane that it wasn't easy to get all these brothers in Kansas City. So it's not going to be easy for Skip and I to bring those brothers to the table, right? It's not going to be easy, but Skip and I have one thing in common, that we have been brothers that have never given up on shit. You know, we've been here, and we've been here with money and without money, right? So I view Skip and I as a direct consequence of what Gaylord and Nane did in Kansas City. And as we're speaking right now, I think that eventually we can have another summit right now. With the work that we're doing right now, I think there's many eyes on us right now, especially with Skip. Skip is well known throughout the community. And Skip is a person that cannot be sold off, you know, and as well as you know that I have been targeted by the federal government, and all the shit that I've gone through are not, I won't sell my ass for anybody, right? So I think that now I think that it's a moment in which we can start working to bring in all of our brothers and sisters, right, to a table with a mission to do something that was left by the Kansas City movement, right? We can continue something like that right now. I think that we're working on this. Both Skip and I work in other cities. I've been working in Long Island and DC. We have brothers out there that continue to do the work, right? In Chicago and so on. We have been around for so long that we have those connections, but we have not had a leadership that brings us together, right? And to talk about these issues and how to empower us to be able to really make change in regards to the population that we work. So I think that that we have a lot of work to do, and we need all the support that we can right now with what Skip and I have put ourselves in, that we don't even fucking know where it's going to take us, right?
I do want to clarify one thing real quick, though. Alex said that we've both been doing the work with and without money. I just have to tell you, Alex, I've been doing it without. I have yet to get a contract from the city.
Well, I gave you all my proposals, man, that I've written. What happened to them?
I think that's so true, though, Skip, to share is the fact that
you have to copy them.
A lot of this work, especially violence intervention, prevention, gang intervention, is not funded, right? I remember working alongside you all, right? And you talked about the Black and brown food distribution, the pantry that you all had. I know that the other day we were just on a call with you, Alex, and Dejan Kesey got killed, and you all were distributing food over there. And that's really based on your relationships. I talk a lot to my team about transformational relationships versus transactional relationships, and what you all have modeled all your lives, and have allowed me to be in your spaces to have this transformational relationship, right? It started with Bo Taylor, you know, Gaylord, Nane, you know, when you were going through your court case, Alex, I had called Skip, and Skip came right away, right? Like, it's like there's a community that consistently shows up, but the reality of this community, it's also not getting paid to do the work. And that's really important to share is the fact that we need to resource organizations like both Second Call, Homies Unidos, Barrios Unidos, Simba, all of you who do this work on the front lines, because you are the ones that are responding to the crisis that is happening every single day. And when I was talking to you all, you know, I was trying to get back in the game. I was like, put me in, Alex, put me in, Skip. I'm here. I want to do this Black and brown, you know, solidarity work. And my reality was the fact that I was also 8 months pregnant. But at the end of the day is because I respect you so much. And, you know, you all have been in service of community. And when you say there's nobody who can actually convene us, it's you two, right? You are the leaders. You are the ones that are on the front lines. You are the ones that are having these difficult conversations outside of what is easy, right? The movement will tweet something, Black and brown solidarity, but there ain't no moving in the movement, right? We need you all to help us move. And so I just wanted to thank you and thank you for raising both those issues of, you know, who's going to convene us when I think it's y'all, and how are we going to get funded, which I think people should be funding y'all now.
I think it's important to make that point, right? That that one thing is that it's not easy. Right now, it's not easy. You know, a Skip. I'm glad I could compare you to Bo, Skip. But Skip and I have just had this conversation last night. You know, it's like, how do we get all of our brothers and sisters to buy into this movement, right? How can we get them back? And we have to create a real clear strategy, right? That they could feel that we're not just another agency that's manipulated by PhD professors that are trying to get our knowledge in a fucking book, right? Or into a curriculum that they want to sell the fucking city, right? And there's this perception that may be happening, right? Which is not. So I think right now, Skip and I have had this conversation and say, how can we make sure that these brothers understand, you know, that there ain't no money fucking involved in this, right? that we don't have no money right now to do this shit, that this shit's real. It's about our lives. It's about our communities, right? And there's no funding behind it right now, right? When many of the folks, you know, that have been part of coalition building before, you know, it was about their hopes of getting some money. And that's the problem that we be having, you know, that many of the violence intervention workers right now are working for a paycheck. And if we call them up right now, literally they said, hey, how much money are you guys getting for this? What's my take, right? And that's the difficult part of all of this at this moment, right? That we need to start pushing, right? Those folks that are only in it for the money out the fuck of our hoods, right? And I think that that's critical to the movement that needs to be built, you know, because there's so many folks out here that are saying they're doing the work, and they're just abusing those folks that are there, you know, that are trying to do the work and get a paycheck, right? And their leadership, it's not with it, right? So I think that we have a lot of work to do right now. Skip and I are in the process of really identifying what those key issues are, right? But I think that we're off to a good point, because there's two people in the city of LA, and that's Skip and I, you know, that people are looking at right now and saying, what the fuck are they doing, right? And we need to figure that we need to figure out how to get to those people that are keeping an eye on us. Just right now, today I was distributing foods right here outside of this restaurant in Los Comales in Koreatown, right? A Salvadoran restaurant. Fucking LAPD came by in bicycle and started taking pictures of all of us distributing food. You know, and believe me, it's not just coincidence. They're trying to figure out what the fuck Skip and I are doing.
Right. Because it's a threat. It's a threat for, you know, Black and brown communities to come together. And again, what I think both of you are demonstrating to all of us is that it is possible. Black and brown solidarity is possible. I know I've had check-ins with the both of you, and to hear just some of the work that you all have done, the footwork, right? And some folks are not ready for this type of solidarity. You know, I know that as well. But the fact that you all keep showing that is so important. And so any last words, Skip?
No, I think Alex pretty much said it all. You know, I mean, it's and you said it too, that as me and Alex, we're looking around, and he's right. We were on the phone last night, and we're looking for those replacements. I think the sign of a good true leader is to find a replacement. So even though you're right, me and Alex are the ones right now, but you know, we have to start molding those people. I had no clue that, you know, Bo was molding me, you know?
Yeah.
So we have to do that. We have to find our replacements now, so this can continue. Matter of fact, so it can multiply. It does not need to continue one by one. We need to multiply this so that we have more of us than we have of, the things that we're fighting against.
Yeah, of course. So we're going to go ahead and bring everybody back so that folks can actually give some last words. Like I said, I really appreciate you all, what you all are doing, especially because it's important in this time. And I think what people need to recognize is the fact that you all have been out in the front lines, making sure that there is peace on the streets. And we thank you for that. And I know that there are other Black and Brown solidarity coalitions that have been forming across the state of California. And so it's really nice to see the fact that, the work that you all have been doing is also having a ripple effect in other communities. But again, if folks aren't following, it's Black and Brown Alliance for Justice. Look them up. And so just want to give folks some last words. I think it's important, for us to have a collective conversation, and especially coming together in one space. It's a privilege and an honor to have, amazing people who I'm connected to all of you. I'm an extension of you all, and to be able to have you in one space at this time. I just want to give you the opportunity to give some last words to our audience who's listening. I glanced at Facebook really quick, and I know, Luis Cardona and Nate Williams and folks are like, kind of like, yes, I'd say that. One of our own, Luis Hernandez, was also, giving you all an applause. So there's so many people that are doing this work, but just want to give you all some last words before we end tonight's program. Really grateful for you all sharing all your work. This hour and a half does not do justice for the amount of knowledge that is in this space. And so, at some point we're going to have a whole summit where all of you speak for much longer. It's going to be a one-day summit, and I'm going to give y'all your own 2 hours, because I think this conversation is necessary in this time. And it's so important for us to know what others have paved the way, and to also always have the analysis presented to all of us. So, whoever wants to go first, please let folks know how they could follow you, your organization, if there's a website, if you're on social media, any books that you have, and you want to recommend, please share. So thank you.
I want to say one thing in closing. As I look back over 25 or 30 years, I think the three critical elements of any sustained movement is create a safe space, you got to build trust, and you got to maintain a dialogue. The fourth leg is funding or whatever it is, but I think creating a safe space where we can have this dialogue is critical, especially today. And we found churches to do that, at least provide a space, a sanctuary to have these conversations.
And Gaylord, is there a website folks could go to?
I represent Rescue, Release, and Restore, which is a rites of passage program for African Americans, but we blend many cultures in together. .com, I think. Look, I'm the oldest one on the call, so I'm super technical challenged.
Thank you, Gaylord.
Go ahead, Nane.
Let me follow up, Brother G there. Hey, Alex, always good to see you, brother. And I te mandé un mensajito. Text you a little thing there.
Okay, I'll try to restrain myself.
Muchas veces, like a lot of times we learned, about peace through the violence that we've experienced. And I'm so glad that Bo Taylor's name was brought up. And Gaylord and I, we spent some time with Bo Taylor in Kenya, in Africa, and Motherland. And I remember
Venezuela.
Yes, but I remember in the motherland where we walked into the biggest slum in Nairobi, and the children started to sing for us, and we were walking with Mr. Harry Belafonte and a crew, and it was me, Gaylord, and two other Vietnam. We was 3 Vietnam veterans, and Bo Taylor, and Bo Taylor was a veteran of the streets. And when we got there, the children started dancing, and Bo got so hit, so emotional about what happened, the presence of him being home. And I remember just being right by his side and saying, brother, you're home, you know, you're home. And he just like, this, Nane, man, I just feel so powerful. It was a homecoming for him. It was also a homecoming for me, Gaylord, and that brother from Alabama. We had all served in the war in Vietnam, and here we are in a peace mission. And I say that just to remind us of where this work takes us. And it doesn't matter what color, what country, wherever we're at. It's the dedication that we are taught about. I also want to mention the brothers and sisters behind the walls, and what's going on in some of these institutions. That there has been a peace treaty, an agreement for the last 8-9 years. You know, we've seen no violence in level 4s. We've seen, you know, there's individual stuff happening, but there has not been organized violence. And we have to raise that up, because that is where the strength comes from. And no matter whether we disagree with whatever the politics are, we are seeing a historical event right now that in places like Salinas Valley State Prison, level 4, there has not been an incident of racial violence for 8-9 years now, and that needs to be talked about. Again, there's so much stuff to say about peace, and you're right, Alex. I think the timing is well to organize something at the level of Kansas City and beyond. And I think that we learned a lot in the last years, and to all the relatives. And I know that everyone in this panel has lost loved ones to violence. So we have to stay strong. As my mentor, Mr. Belafonte says, I don't want to hear that effing retirement word out of you. All right. So we're in here for the long haul, and we you know, and those naysayers will always be there. They've always been there, and they'll always be there. And we just got to keep at it. Thank you, everybody, for the work, and blessings to all.
And so I just want to share with all of you, follow barriosunidos.net, which is a website, and I believe it's B Productions on Instagram. Thank you, Nane. Anyone else?
I tagged Aida.
Yeah,
Well,
okay.
I want to be brief, because I'm sort of stunned by everybody's dedication and heart. And the first thing that comes to my mind is how sacred your work is, and how strong you are spiritually for doing the work. You know, I've had a brother incarcerated, and there were times where I just could not handle it. So the fact that you go back behind the walls, or that you receive them when they come out of those walls, just humbles me to no end. So I just want to say my heart is with you. If I was a billionaire, I'd give you all my money. But that your work is sacred, and it elevates all of us to a very different level of love and spirituality, and it shows us what true humanity is in a very dark time that we're living in right now. So thank you all.
Thank you.
I tag Gay.
And unless Alex was gonna say something, I think, right?
Yeah, it was like, who do you tag?
Oh. Well, all I can
I'm sorry
say-
for the background music. I'm in my favorite restaurant.
That's all right. That's our soundtrack. I want to just echo what Aida said, is that this is a well of much more than just information, but of felt experiences that really can't be described. And so part of me wants to just say how grounded I feel in the stories that you've told, and also the accountability that you've shared as men as well, and the stories that you told about women in the spaces. But part of me also wants to say to my colleagues, the scholars, right, that are often adjacent to this work, but often do not much more than describe it. And I really want to talk to especially some of my younger colleagues who are starting out on in this work and trying to do it in a really conscious way. And I want to encourage them on that road. And I also just want to say that to all of the people that I work with, that there's no substitute for spending the time, as all of these brothers have told us, for spending the time in community and having the strength to be there through all of the difficult times when there are no wins at all, and then still having faith in ourselves and in your people. There's no substitute for that, and that's the real work. And I also want to just thank you all so much for doing it, and for being strong like that, and often unrecognized, but always appreciated by all of us. So I thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Gay.
Thank you.
And Gay, is there any way folks can follow you, or are there websites?
I'm only on Twitter, so but you know, I'm easily findable, and certainly always available to help think about how to elevate the work that everyone here is doing. And I really enjoy doing that, actually. So please reach out to me, especially if people who are watching are the folks that do that. I'm happy to help in any way.
Thank you.
You should make a visit, Nane.
That's right.
Yes.
Alex or Skip?
Well, I'm just truly grateful to be in this Zoom, you know, to be with Gaylord and Nani, who definitely, you know, I tip my hat to them, and to the young ladies, to the Dr. Johnson and Miss Hurtado, you know, just truly grateful to be here, to be able to share this experience. You know, I don't take it lightly that I work side by side with Alex Sanchez, you know, because he was in the work before me, and the stuff that he did, and, you know, the experience that he had having to leave El Salvador, be killed, you know, and how he's been able to organize. But there's something that Nani said that just made me realize that we all have the same mentor, which is so wonderful and beautiful, that Harry Belafonte, Mr. B, has delivered so much to so many, that the multiplication that I was talking about will definitely ring true. You know, we're all, you know, I want to say like different arms of the teachings that we've had that came before us. So if anyone is interested in following Second Call on Facebook, it's the number 2NDCALL. Also Instagram is Second Call Wolfpack. And our website is Second Call, the number 2NDCALL.org. So it's real easy to find us and get in touch with us, and, you know, just grateful to be a part of this. So thanks for inviting me, Carmen.
Thank you, Skip. Alex.
I'm just grateful to be alive.
La puerta negra. Hey!
What happened? Oh yeah.
Song in the back.
Tú sabes, I'm gonna ask for my beer right after I hang up. But you know, I'm telling you, it's being in this restaurant right now. You know, it brings me back memories because this is where I first met with Magdalena Rose Avila, you know, who was the founder of Homies Unidos in El Salvador, right, in 1996. And I started having meetings in this restaurant. And I'm just gonna put the phone around, you know, so you can see that there's the restaurant. There's the spot. This back room right here where I'm at was the spot that we started having our first Homies Unidos meetings, right? So this is sacred ground right here.
Órale, Don.
So I feel that, you know, I understand that now, you know, I'm not the youngster 20 years ago. I understand right now I have a position of leadership within the movement, you know, of for our young brothers that are getting on board, right? And it's my duty to see that these brothers understand what they're getting into and make it out of heart, right? Not just another job, not just another position, right? But to understand that we need more soldiers in this position that could grow up into leadership positions, right? Um, and I think that if we are able to make things happen through the Gathering for Justice and other folks that you could all help us on, I think Skip and I are ready to do the footwork to bring us all together as one again. We've been separated. We've been divided. They used us and abused us. They put us against each other. In Los Angeles, it's not easy to do the work that Skip and I are doing. Everybody is in their silos. Everybody has been bought off in some ways or others, but there still could be some salvaging. You know, we still could bring those brothers back, Latinos or African Americans or Blacks, into uh, uh, um, into what we originally started to do this work for, right? So I'm really thrilled, you know, and at taking this task, although it's a lot of work, it's going to be a lot of headaches that we're going to be having with Skip and I. But I think we have mentors such as Gaylord and Nane and your leadership, Carmen, and everybody else that wants to come in on board to take this while we're starting over here to the next step. We have relationships across the country that we built with Skip, with different communities that we can reach out and bring to the table, whether it's the Latin Kings in New York or MS-13 in New York or Crips and Bloods throughout the country. You know, we've made those connections already with those communities. And I think that we'll be able to bring something together that could take us into another direction. We need us to come together again. And I think I wasn't there for Kansas City, but I think that I wished I was, but I was still gangbanging during that time. And nobody came to my neighborhood during that time to invite us. But I think right now, I think it's the right time, and I think we should do it again. Maybe in Kansas City, just for the namesake, right, of a reunification and revamping, or it could be in Santa Cruz. I don't care. I just feel that we need to bring us together again to center us in where we need to be spiritually in this line of work.
Mm-hmm. Kansas City was 27 years ago, Nane, and so you were in your early 40s, just FYI. But I think it's so right. Alex, if you could please share with folks how folks can follow you and learn more about the org.
Well, they can follow us on Instagram also at Homies Unidos, but also they can follow the Black Orion 4 and number 4 Justice on Instagram. right? They could also go and Google our names and you'll find us. You'll find a lot more things that you shouldn't read about us or just, right? But anyways, I think that that I'm not easy. I'm really fairly easy to catch, right? So I'm not worried, right, about some cops taking pictures of me today. They know where they can find me any minute, right? So I ain't worried about nothing.
Yeah. Well, I just want to thank you all for joining us for this important conversation. Thank you so much, Skip, Aida, Gaylord, Nane, Alex. You know, this, everybody is the family that raised me. You know, these are the people, this is home for me. And I know a lot of folks see us in a different light, but these are the people that cultivated my leadership and growth. And I'm so grateful for all of you. I want to thank everyone so much for joining us tonight for We Keep Us Safe, Black and Brown Solidarity Town Hall. Thank you again to each of our panelists. Please follow these incredible organizers and organizations who remain on the front lines of this work and this movement. If you like what you heard tonight, please follow us at NY Justice League and Gather #4 Justice on Twitter and Instagram. To keep up to date on our work, you can text Police Free Schools to 97779. And finally, you can support our work by making a donation on Cash App at $Gathering #4 Justice, or by texting The Gathering to 44321. Or you can actually go on our website to gatheringforjustice.org. Before I end the program tonight, I want to thank each and every one of you who have joined us throughout this series and during our very special 15th anniversary weeks of programming. This has been an unimaginable time in our nation's history. For many of us, the challenges of the last few months have been nearly insurmountable, but yet we rise. Our people, Black and Brown people, are facing a lot right now. So please know that the gathering is here for you. I want to just say, you know, it was so important for me to bring, as I, you know, end this 15-year anniversary of the Gathering for Justice, I wanted to bring the people that actually helped start the Gathering for Justice and also help cultivate my leadership, because I wanted you to know them. And I wanted you to also see that Black and Brown solidarity is possible. And so thank you so much to everybody. Thank you for all the information that everybody shared. Please follow these organizations. Please fund these organizations. These organizations are on the front lines every single day. Nana talked about starting Barrios Unidos 43 years ago. That's a long time, as well as, you know, Second Call came out of the need to respond to community violence. The 1993 Kansas City Peace Summit was a response to take back the lives of Black and Brown people who were being killed on the streets. And so again, you know, from Homies Unidos to Second Call to Barrios Unidos to Gaylord and the work that he's doing, please make sure that you check them out. And also look out for these amazing professors that have amazing books. Dr. Aida Hurtado, who just released her Intersectional Chicana Feminist book, and Dr. Gay Teresa Johnson, who has so many books around Black and Brown issues. So please follow them. And again, thank you so much. Have a great night. Goodbye.